I went and saw X the other night.
Oh yeah.
So you guys pick from that.
Yeah.
Their supposedly final tour, and I had never seen them before, and so it was kind of on my list of like, oh yeah, I need to see X. And they were freaking incredible. They were so great, and just like I expected it to be good, but I was floored by how awesome it was. But it reminded me of sometime in the last maybe year and a half. For some reason, I went down kind of an X rabbit hole, and was watching these Billy Zoom videos. Billy Zoom is the guitar player in X, and he's a really enigmatic, interesting guy because if listeners don't know, the band X, they were kind of late 70s LA punk rock band who were kind of a seminal part of that scene, and put out some really killer albums. And they've been going kind of ever since. I mean, off and on, but still with the original lineup, same four people. But Billy Zoom, the guitar player, he always had this really wild presence where that was in complete contrast to everything else in the kind of LA punk scene, which was very, and you think about like Germs, and Darby Crash, and like these it's people who like, safety pin earrings and crazy mohawks and cut up clothing and just, spitting, everybody's spitting on everybody else, and just like really aggressively antisocial, just, like that was punk rock, right? And Billy Zoom saw all that, and where X was making this music that was kind of, I mean, it was fast and loud, but it was also kind of informed by kind of 50s rock and roll, kind of rockabilly, kind of, Jerry Lee Lewis or God, why am I Chuck it's fucking
Chuck Yeager, Chuck Berry.
Chuck Berry, thank you. God, why am I blanking on that, man? I'm having these senior moments more and more, man. It's really depressing. But yeah, just that kind of vibe. And Billy Zoom kind of looked at this whole scene, and he was just like, I think, I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but it was almost like this kind of new conformity, of everybody just kind of, you trying to outdo each other. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to dress really nice, wear like these really sharp shirts, and have a really beautiful silver glitter guitar, Les Paul, and slick my hair back and just stand on stage and smile. And he would play the whole set just like wearing this kind of like psychotic smile, this grin, where he would just be like, anyway. So that's Billy Zoom. And to this day, I mean, now these days he sits on a stool while he plays, but he still has the same smile, and he looks just kind of like an Orange County grandpa, I mean, it's still kind of the same, just, Hawaiian shirt and hair slicked back and his cool, like horn rim glasses, shades, but super chill dude, and just totally shredding. Amazing. But what I remembered, so when I went down this rabbit hole, I was watching these interviews with him, kind of recent interviews. And what I didn't realize is that Billy Zoom is Car Guy. And he used to be he was a Vespa
Mazda guy.
Yeah, Zoom, right? Yeah. Well, there is a Mazda in this story, but it's not his. No, it's better. It's better because so Billy Zoom, like he was a Vespa guy for years, and then he sold his Vespa apparently because he said he didn't like the helmet hair, that Billy Zoom can't have helmet hair. And in the interview, he refers to himself in third person like that, which I thought was great. And so he sold his prized Vespa, and he got an Austin Healey, and which I assume he still has. And these days he and when he's not playing music, he has like a shop where he repairs amplifiers. So you can just go and bring your amp to his shop. It's in like some fairly anonymous Santa Ana business park in Southern California, and have Billy Zoom work on your Fender Twin or whatever, cool. Which is awesome. But the other story that he told that blew me away was they were talking about the Cramps, kind of contemporaneous New York rockabilly, psychobilly band that kind of invented the genre of psychobilly, which is kind of rockabilly with sort of 50s pulp horror overtones. And the Cramps were led by this couple, Lux Interior and Poison Ivy, and they dressed really outrageously, and Lux Interior was like this really tall, gangly guy who's like 6'3", 6'4", and he would wear like big tall heels on stage, and just like like low cut leather pants and nothing else, and he would be shoving the microphone down the front of his pants and then basically shoving it down his throat, and just doing all kinds of outrageous stuff. And Poison Ivy, who played guitar, super sexy and just kind of buxom, kind of 50s pinup looking. But Billy Zoom, they were friends from way back, and he told this story about them. I mean, this must have been some point in the 90s, coming through town and giving him a call saying, "Hey man, we have this amplifier." Or maybe they must have been living in LA at the time. But said, "Hey man, can I bring this amplifier by?" So yeah, of course. So Lux and Poison Ivy roll up, totally like in costume, like in full costume, full character. They're just like outrageous stage persona outfits. And what are they driving? What is Lux Interior driving? A Mazda Miata.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Which is just like the most incredible, like the most incongruous visual. I mean, I'm 6 foot, right? And I drove a Miata for about 15 years, a first generation NA Miata.
Yeah.
And even for me, like I'm looking over the top of the windshield, right?
Right.
And when you're a tall person driving a Miata, especially like the first, second gen ones, where they're pretty low cut, like you look like a goober. Because you're sticking so far up in the car.
Yeah.
You look ridiculous, right?
I look like Donkey Kong in Mario Kart, like riding on top of this little tiny car.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just the image of Lux Interior stepping out or just pulling up in a 90s, presumably first generation Mazda Miata.
That rocks.
Sick.
So good. And I was telling my buddy Keith, who we went to that show together, and I was just like, oh my God, I totally forgot about this hilarious interview with Billy Zoom that I watched like a year ago.
I think like when you're in the persona though, like you have to wear the shit everywhere because like someone's gonna recognize you if you're in your like whatever your khakis. I had, this is a little short aside, but I had this girl in my high school who always like, she was like the huge David Bowie fan. She was super cool. And she was tiny, but she would wear these like huge, like feather boa fur coat. She had like this super tight, long, like full length orange, green, and red coat that she would wear everywhere. Like always full makeup, yada, yada. And there's one day I was working at a grocery store and it was like 100 10 degrees outside. And she walked in, and I was like working in the produce department. She had like a tank top and shorts on, and I was like, Riley, what's going on? And she was like, if you ever fucking tell anybody you saw me like this, I'll fucking kill you. So like, I was like, I think you look cool. You look fine. And
Phenomenal.
That's great. Well, I mean, that's the other thing that Billy Zoom said in this interview was I think the guy, he told that story, and the guy asked him, well, you know, what were they like, you know, because Lux died like 15 years ago, and Billy Zoom was just like, they were total, like, he didn't say it in a mean way, but he was just like, they're total posers. They were the nicest, most normal people. They were not. They were not crazy at all. They were just, it was all kind of a show, you know. And it's like, hey, it's show business.
that's right.
It's wild too, because just in the last year or two, one of my favorite songs of theirs from like 1981, my 12-year-old daughter was like singing it, just like you know, the song Goo Goo Muck. Oh, when the sun goes down and the moon comes up, and I'm just like, are you singing the Cramps? What the hell is going on? And apparently that Wednesday TV show, they put it in that, and so now all the kids know the Cramps, or at least know Goo Goo Muck. And such a wild, unlikely, weird thing, especially because my wife and we met at my friend's bar here in Rochester that is called Lux, that is named after Lux Interior.
Aww.
Full circle.
That's so great.
Rory, I feel like maybe we should start with just
Why I'm so mad today.
Go off, King.
yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah. So, as avid readers who have been with us from the very beginning would know, I leased a Rivian R1S a few months ago because it was available and not super expensive compared to the other stuff that was out there. And it's been really good. I mean, I think overall it's been a very nice car. It has, you know, does everything I need it to do, looks nice. The interior's nice, yada, yada, yada. But there's a couple things about it that like drive me absolutely nuts. One of which is that it is related to Bluetooth. Bluetooth is like,
I fucking hate Bluetooth.
Satan's technology.
yeah, I am a very, and you guys know me well enough, but I think I'm a pretty like low key guy, and I don't get like easily frustrated, and I don't like have a lot of like explosions emotionally. Like I'm pretty even keeled. But the Bluetooth thing is like the number of times a day when I want to like overhand spike my phone through the floor,
Oh my
or
God.
like throw it through my car window, it just like would shock you. And I think like, so the Rivian, its default mode is locked, and when you walk up to it, it presents its door handles to you ideally, and then you open the doors. Which is fine if you always have your phone on you, which I don't. Always have your phone on. Always have the Rivian app opened.
Is there a physical key, or is it just your phone?
No. So there is a physical key fob that doesn't work very well, so I don't carry it.
Okay.
It's also Bluetooth.
This is my nightmare. This is my nightmare. This is my nightmare.
Yeah. And there's also a key that you can keep in your wallet that's just like a credit card.
Oh no.
Where'd he go? We lost him. The spirit of Bluetooth is attacking
Come
Rory
back.
physically.
I know. Yeah. The fuck?
Oh, the ghost. He's right though. Bluetooth fucking sucks. We have to go back.
Oh, I hate it. And the thing is, I mean, I refuse. Everybody in the world has fucking Bluetooth, earbuds or whatever. Not me, man. Like, we just have like this little, like Bose brick that we bought like 12 years ago or something. And, we've got a couple of other like those little Bluetooth speakers, and I'll listen to it in the bathroom. Like if I'm taking a shower or something, and there's nobody else home, I'll throw on some music or podcast or whatever. And I feel like one time out of 3, just getting my phone to hook up with it, it drives me fucking insane. It's so aggravating. It's like,
it's the worst technology.
It's so stupid. Just either work or don't,
Yeah, and they're taking the aux ports out of everything so that you have to. So it's like I'm being forced to. I'm born to cord, forced to Bluetooth.
Yeah, not me, man. I just if it takes 1,000 dongles for me to live my life, that's what I will do.
May I forever be the man with 1,000 dongles. Amen. No, I bought my phone because it has a fucking aux port on it, and I was like, I'll take it. Listen, I don't care what else is wrong with it. Dude, man, I get it. The idea of a car that holds itself hostage unless I approach it properly, like transmitting from my phone, is like, oh my god, I would rather die.
Nope. I hate it. It's so stupid. And even like my car has the thing where, like, when you have the fob in your pocket, like it'll sense you.
I hate it.
And it'll light up the door handle and unlock, like with a pull.
Yeah, no, I need, like, if they want me specifically to get on board with EVs, I need an EV that has no extra computer in it. I want my user experience to behave exactly as if I was in, like, a car from 2003.
Yeah.
But it happens to have, like, an electric system in it.
Right.
No problem. Done.
Right.
Got me.
It's like, why does a door handle need to be electrified? It's fucking idiotic.
There's no reason.
It's a mechanism. It is a latch.
Yeah.
It's the most simple mechanical thing. It does not need to be electrified. It does not need to be activated digitally through an unreliable digital signal carrier, for that. Rory's back.
There's our man.
All right. I recorded all that. So, I don't know exactly where I was, but I'll kind of just start at the beginning.
The door handles had presented themselves to you.
So the door handles present themselves to you, which is not, you have to walk up to the car, you have to have your shit on you. But like, if your kids are, say it's raining, put yourself in this position. It's raining, you're running late to get them to school, you're getting your shoes on, and your girls run out first to the car. The doors are going to be locked, and they're going to be standing there in the rain, looking back at you, saying, Dad, unlock the car. And then you got to pull your phone out, open your Bluetooth, open the app, push the button, and then wait a few seconds while a signal beams, presumably from your phone, to space, and then back down to the car. It is
Young Chomsky noise.
Cue the noise.
It is so mind-boggling that would be the way to do it. There's a number of different. You have a little key fob that doesn't really work. You have a little credit card thing that doesn't really work. So you end up using your phone for everything. Which means you always have to be connected to the car via your phone, which means like if you're in the shop listening on your headphones or like on an important phone call, say, and you walk too close to the car, it'll automatically connect to the car, which is like, I think more of an iPhone Bluetooth logic thing than a Rivian problem. So like, why in a million years?
Oh, does it put your conversation through the?
Yeah.
Now you're talking on the speakers inside the car, even though you're outside the car.
Yeah. So I'm outside the car.
Oh my god.
With my headphones on, having a conversation, and I walk too close to the car.
Oh fuck that.
Or if I have to move the car, like open the door for any reason, then you're on the and then you have to figure out how to like pause the conversation. Yep. Mind-boggling. It's like
I hate it.
It's so it's so stupid, and it's so like who. It really like again. It's one of those things too that's like so illustrative of like fucking Apple, like the UI company. Like this is like their idea. Like presumably someone who works at Apple in some capacity owns the AirPods. Like they have them, or like they've used them before,
right.
And like did they not encounter this use case? But the Rivian thing, like again, this is more of a rant about like how Bluetooth works. But what's not a rant about how Bluetooth works, what is specific to Rivian, is they do they have the magic of the over-the-air update, where they'll update their software remotely, which is like fine, not that annoying. And I'll tell you, like the actual in practice so far, the first 2 times this happened, it made the car a lot better. So it rode very rough. When I got it, and they've updated the behavior of the air suspension over the air a couple times, and actually made the car better. So like, not too bad. But the issue is that for some reason, without my approval or my like my doing really anything, it decided to update in a parking lot away from the house. Where I was with the whole family. We're at the autocross that I didn't end up going to. The Subaru is, or the the Lada is still fouling plugs, and the exhaust isn't working well. So I kept it out. But we went to support another driver and got stuck there. I can't tell you the last time my car left me stranded somewhere. It's been probably 20 years.
Because it was in the middle of an update.
Yeah.
Infuriating.
Can you tell us the first line of that with how long your vehicle would be unusable for while it was mid-update?
50 minutes. So, which is like infuriating, but it's also like there's no way to cancel the update once it started.
Yeah.
It did send me a message yesterday that was like, oh, when would be a good time to update it? And I think I said 1:30 yesterday would be a good time to update it because I was at home. But 1:30 today is a very bad time to update it. But to me, it's like, A, you should be able to cancel it if it's mid-update, if there's an emergency. Like,
I mean, what if you got to bring your pregnant wife to the hospital? It's like, fuck? And
literally everything that I do is that important. So I was coming home to record this podcast. I needed to be here. It was kind of a life and death situation, and I think the other thing about it too is there should be like any time that car is going to be out of commission for any reason, there should be like an affirmative thing. Like 2 people have to put a physical key in the into the car and turn them at exactly the same time, and like one of the people has to be the president or some elected, like at least like a notary public or something.
Yeah.
Like it has to be somebody with some type of authority. But I think like the idea that it like. Even, like I said, even if I did say like 1:30 is a good time yesterday to do this, and it was like, oh, we have a 1:30 today,
right?
Which is crazy enough, but it's also like it did it. It knows, the car knows I'm away from home. It knows that I'm in a parking lot. And it also, like I said, there was no like affirmative like, hey, is this cool? It's like it's now a good time to do this. It was just like, yeah, we're doing it, and hope you don't have to go anywhere for a while. Which is like, again, like in the scale of human suffering, like this is a huge deal. No, it's not. But it's like, this is a brand new car, and Peter, as you know, this will sound crazy to you, but I think like I have an expectation that my brand new car will provide me transportation when it's needed.
Right? Yeah. Just do the basic, the fundamental job of a fucking car, which is just to take you from one place to another when you need to get from one place to another.
The thing that literally every one of my...
A thing that a Model T could do?
Yeah. Every single one of my piece of shit cars that I've ever had. This is like, I haven't had a lot of brand new cars. Like most of my cars are like Peter. Like I've had I've driven a 73 Beetle in the winter every day. I've driven like a 69 Ford LTD in the winter. Those cars I would expect to be unreliable, but they always got me where I needed to go.
Right.
And it's like this thing that is like, but the bigger thing about it, and I think the thing with the Bluetooth thing is like, this is just, the era of like technology providing any meaningful improvement or value in our lives is so far distant to me, where it's like anything coming out of Silicon Valley or the Silicon Valley mindset, providing anything like I can remember a time when I was like, oh fuck yeah, I can have all my songs on my iPod. This is sick. Right. Like that was great. Yeah. And like maybe that's just me getting old or whatever, but it's like most of the shit that I encounter that is like whatever under the broadest umbrella of tech sucks, and it's annoying, and it makes my life worse. And it's like and I don't think I really struggle to use it. I don't think that's, you know, it's like my dad would say that because he can't use the shit. But like to me, it's like I know how to use it. I know what it is, but it's like, who is it for? Like, who benefits from this? What is this like? Why is my car better because it can do this? Like, why is it? And you know, a lot of it too. And not to get into, I know we're going to talk about a fun topic today, but it's like a lot of it is just like it's like kind of the sputtering of industry in America, or the sputtering of like you know, the last pieces of this economic system kind of like grinding to a halt, where it's like we don't do anything, we don't produce anything. We have this entire segment of the economy which is very important, tech sector, from an investment standpoint, from like moving money around standpoint, that there's just really no, like they can't do anything valuable. They can't do like, you know, like the AI thing or like the metaverse or whatever. Like they're out of ideas. They have nothing left to contribute. But it's like, fuck, we got to keep that money moving around, or the whole thing stops.
Rory, you say that, man, but have you seen my Apple virtual reality goggles? Here they are. Yeah. Check this out, dude. This shit is crazy.
Yeah. You're doing. I can see you're doing this Zoom call in virtual reality right now.
Amazing. It's amazing.
Peter's in VR chat. There's like some little like it's the Here Come That Boy like frog rolling by. There's like some guy doing Naruto somewhere.
I don't want to take my whole thing like again like in the scale of like human inconvenience or suffering or whatever. Not a huge deal, but it is so. Like I said, I'm a pretty chill guy. I have like a very high tolerance for bullshit, and I generally like do not have an emotional response to most things in my life. But like my phone and this car, like the number of times I've thought about overhand spiking my phone through the floor, or like just putting my hand through the car window to open the door, like daily, this is happening to me.
Like, you're a guy who went through how many like weeks of thrash on a Lada, a khaki swapped Lada, and maintained total chill.
I think, Peter, like you saw when I broke the timing chain cover, my response was total zen. Like, okay, I'm gonna walk over in the corner and fix this. There was no like,
you were frustrated, but you just said I broke it
and I'll fix it.
And we could all sense the frustration, and it's like, but yeah, you just walked over to the side of the room and very, very quietly set about addressing the new problem while we kind of continued to work. But yeah, that would have been, I probably would have probably showed a little bit more
emotion,
visible anger, or frustration.
Yeah, but like I said, I'm a chill guy, but man, just I can't fathom getting in this super expensive brand new car and just having it be like, you know what, I need a minute. I'm doing my thing here. I'm talking to my friends. We
all got our limits.
I'm talking to my friends back here in Normal, Illinois. None of my old cars would do this. All of my old cars, like if you wanted to get them, you just pull on the door handle because they're unlocked. Like that, and they don't lock unless you tell them to. They don't connect to your fucking Bluetooth unless you tell them to. Like it.
Right.
Anyway.
No, that's what. Like when you disappeared for a minute, Maddie and I were talking, and I was just saying, like, there's no reason for a door handle.
No.
To be electric. It's the most simple mechanical thing in the world. It is a latch. It is a literal just. There's no reason to turn it into something that requires a digital activation.
No. And it's
Just
I can remember my dad
nonsense.
when I was a kid. I forgot what we got, but I had electric power seats, and I was like, this is kind of cool. And he was like, you know what? He's like, that's just one more thing to break. That's just one more thing that I have to fix and pay for. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of not a fun way to think about it, but it's also like extremely true.
Yeah.
But you know what kind of car would never do this to us?
What's that, Rory?
A Saturn.
Yeah.
No, there was a fucking car.
That was a fucking car. So the thing that kind of started the wheels turning in my brain about this was at the Empire Hill Climb. There was a very cool and unlikely participant who had taken an earlier mid-90s first generation Saturn coupe and turned it into this kind of crazy, like,
It had, what did the guy say? It has the lemons arrow pointing to all the awesome like stuff out or down around the down at the bottom of the body.
yeah, well, they had fabricated like a kind of like this crazy arrow front end, and like, crazy skirts, and then like this really wild looking, ridiculous diffuser in the back, that's supposed to suck the air out and kind of give the car downforce. It was just this really comical build on an incredibly unlikely car, because those cars were never meant to do this sort of duty. They were the most kind of completely pedestrian and ordinary cars, just kind of built to be just simple and appeal to the broadest possible swath of the American populace, buying public.
It's a 94 SL2 that runs in lemons and runs almost every year, I think, at the hill climb.
Okay.
And like you said, it's got a huge front splitter. They did what I was talking about with the Lada, which is to cut the front fenders off and then put a spacer, basically a piece of metal in between, so that you can move the front spacers outward and give yourself a little bit more coverage on the tire. But yeah, really a fan favorite and like super, super cool, like overdeveloped and actually really fast Saturn.
Yeah. Does it have the original engine in it, or what are they running it? Do you know?
I'm looking at it now. It does not appear to be, but I can't see it. It's like he's got an intake on top of the valve cover. It looks kind of like an Ecotec 4, but he's got an intake on top of the valve cover that's like maybe 2.5 feet wide and 6 inches tall. I mean, it's like, it is an absolute wild build.
But that got me thinking about Saturn. So I was trying to explain kind of the why this car was funny to Maddie, and I was kind of explaining the history of Saturn. And to me, this it kind of exemplifies a kind of a moment in American history, and kind of exemplifies this larger moment of weirdness, but also like the specific story of Saturn and the phenomenon that arose subsequent to its introduction is really crazy and has been, I feel like, completely memory hold. I never hear anybody talk about the completely bizarre stuff that happened around Saturn in the 90s culturally. So I feel like it's a fun topic because it touches on a lot of automotive stuff, but also stuff that isn't automotive and is just kind of part of the larger zeitgeist of the time. The 90s, to me, I mean, you guys are younger than me. I'm a solid Gen Xer. You guys are you both millennials on kind of?
I'm like an elder millennial, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And Maddie, are you a
I'm like right in the middle. Yeah. The Gen Zs come in like 8 years after me.
okay. So I mean, when you guys think about the '90s, what do you think of? What was your experience of the '90s? I guess.
X-Men, Chicago Bulls. It was like I was running around in the woods and like watching cartoons and like collecting comic books and stuff. Like I was a kid.
Yeah, it was all Pokemon cards. I was watching a lot of Dragon Ball Z after school. I was playing with my Pokemon cards. I was running around in the backyard in the creek. I was rolling around in the creek a lot, eating a lot of dirt. Not allergic to anything now. Thank you, dirt.
Like I remember, like the Monica Lewinsky thing. I remember like Bill Clinton being president. I remember like having kind of a vague political sensibility, but like I was a little kid, like I think I turned 10 in 1991. So 92.
Yeah.
10 and 92.
I was born in 1990, so imagine how little I remember politically of the 90s.
Well, for me, so my experience of the '90s was, I mean, I was in my 20s. That was the decade of my 20s. But it was also, I remember thinking at the time that it's like, okay, I don't have like a broad kind of sample to draw from, but just in my brief experience of the decades that I have lived through, those being the 70s and 80s, and I felt like, I was surrounded by boomers who would talk incessantly about the 60s, and I had watched Happy Days, and so I felt like I had a pretty good handle on the 50s. So it's like, okay, given that, even with that pretty limited thing, the 90s just felt like, at the time, I thought, man, this decade is fucking weird. There's a weird vibe going on. And it manifested in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of it kind of just stemmed from some kind of historical factors. I mean, you had kind of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of the Soviet Union. So kind of end of the Cold War.
Moment of silence for the Soviet Union.
RIP, which kind of upended a lot of, I mean, the reality of the Cold War had provided kind of a sense of order, I guess, or just like a way, this kind of fundamental thing where
it was what was happening.
Yeah, right. And this is why we do all the things that we do, because, the Soviets could be doing this, and we justify all of our insanity by, as being in opposition to the threat of communism or whatever. And suddenly that was gone, and it felt really weird, and I feel like it felt like suddenly like this kind of unmoored historical moment, where it's like, oh, well, what? So there's no like existential threat anymore. Like what, so what do we do now? And so there was that. There was also like for me, I mean, in the 80s, I was listening to all kinds of, crazy underground music. And I mean, this sounds silly to compare this to, the fall of the Soviet Union, but in a weird way, it was almost like a weird parallel thing where in 1991, when that Nirvana record came out, and it was just this, and it had nothing to do with the record itself. It was just like the weird, just kind of moment where suddenly that just like it was, until that moment, it had been completely inconceivable that any of the music that me and my friends were listening to, Sonic Youth, Big Black, go down the list, Swans, the idea that any band from that world, from the kind of underground, and even kind of, Nirvana's kind of contemporaries, Mudhoney or whatever, the idea that would be on the radio or on MTV, like that's just like that's fantasy world, you know? I mean, it's like that'll never happen. And then suddenly that, you know, Smells Like Teen Spirit was on MTV every hour. And it was, what the fuck is going on? And it just became this bizarre thing where, you know, and then suddenly all the major record labels are trying to find the next Nirvana, and suddenly this whole little scene that you know, the bands that I like or the bands that I play in, you know, like I know people who are getting publishing deals and who are, you know, getting offered crazy contracts, and it's like, what is happening? It just felt like upside down world, you know, and in much the same way that the kind of the end of the Cold War felt like upside down world too. And so those are a couple of things that happened at the beginning of that decade. And then subsequent to that, there was just all this just weirdness, just ambient weirdness. You know, you had stuff like the Nike guys, the Nike cult, Heaven's Gate, right? Those guys who all committed suicide in San Diego. You had stuff like Ruby Ridge and the Oklahoma City bombing and
Waco and yeah.
Brief digression, car digression, Waco related. So David Koresh, the guy who was the founder of what were those guys called? I can't even remember. That
Branch
cult?
Davidians.
Yes.
Branch Davidians. Yeah.
Before they moved, and this is anecdotal. I cannot verify this, but it was something that I remember like being told and having this pointed out to me at the time. I would be curious to try and go and verify it now, but at the time, before they had relocated to Waco, to that ranch, Koresh and a number of those people had been living in an old neighborhood in a town called Laverne in Southern California, which is where I was living in the mid-90s. And there was this house that was around the corner from where I lived, kind of on the corner of like a little side neighborhood street and then a slightly larger street. Big house, big old kind of Victorian, you know, early 1900s house. And supposedly they had lived there, or a bunch of them had. And even after they relocated, after they had moved to Texas, like a handful of them had stayed behind and were still living in this house, apparently, supposedly. And to me, the thing that was remarkable about this house was that it was kind of run down. The yard was like really overgrown. But in the backyard, amidst all the you know, in a tangle of just weeds and kind of unkept growth, was a Citroen SM.
Oh, cool.
Early 70s Citroen Maserati sports car that just a completely bizarre and fantastic car, one of the weirdest and most futuristic, and I feel like those cars should be worth so much more now than they are.
Yeah.
But it was like in complete disrepair, you know, hydraulic pneumatic suspension totally shot, so it's just like sitting on the ground basically. And I always just thought it was like, wait, the house with the Citroen in it?
Damn, I wonder if it's still there. I could restore it.
Isn't that great? Anyway, so possible that David Koresh or somebody in his cult was rocking a pretty rad Citroen at some point.
I could see that. I mean, that's a definite cult leader type car for sure.
Right?
The Maserati engine Citroen with the hydropneumatic suspension.
Right.
I
Yeah.
haven't been able to verify the Citroen being there, but there is a Chicago Tribune cultist. I wish I had been in Waco. Confirms that yeah, there were several of them who were left behind at the house in Laverne at the time
No
of
shit.
the compound. Yeah, so
Wow.
I'm gonna throw you guys I'll put this in the show notes. But yeah, so we'll keep looking into the Citroen. We'll figure it out.
Killer. So anyway,
So cool.
just setting that as kind of the general kind of ambient atmosphere of the 90s. Into this, let's rewind back up a little bit. The state of General Motors in the 70s and 80s, the state of the U.S. automotive industry in general. This is kind of post OPEC crisis in the early 70s. You have these huge corporations that have gotten pretty lazy, pretty arrogant, and they're trying to kind of meet consumer demand for something other than the big garbage barges that they've been selling for years, and they're not doing so good. They're not meeting the challenge, and this is kind of what we now lovingly refer to as the malaise era, where there were also new kind of emissions control regulations, safety regulations that in fairness they kind of had to invent some new technology to make cars pollute less, and at first that technology was pretty weak, and so cars kind of the engines kind of had to be strangled a bit, and with the result that you had performance cars that relied more on stickers than on power to project their performance.
Yeah. I remember like one of the key memories of this era is like a friend of mine had a Cadillac convertible that was like handed down to him, that was bought at a buy here pay here lot or whatever, but it was a 500 cubic inch engine. It's making like 130 horsepower or something like that. It's like
exactly.
Just such a, it's like the whole industry was built around building these big displacement, big, comfortable, really amazing cars. I mean, I think like in the modern context. And then, totally caught with their pants down by the fuel crisis and the emissions thing, and like tried to adapt what they were building in the 60s to this new reality of like fuel being very expensive and having some type of emissions control. And it just, like you said, I mean, you had the Camaros that were making, 300-400 horsepower in the 60s, making like 120 horsepower. It was the malaise era, and it was, I think Jimmy Carter said something we had about a national malaise, and then Phil Greedon from Merle Martin from Jalopnik used that to describe cars of that era, and I think it really does perfectly describe the cars of that era, American cars.
Yeah. I didn't know that he was the person that coined that. Yeah. That's great though.
Yeah.
Or that he got it from Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
But it's so perfect. It's the kind of thing that like when you hear one person refer to it that way, it's just like, oh yeah, that's exactly what that was. So kind of pretty universal adoption.
Yeah.
That term and universal understanding. But yeah, so General Motors, which was obviously the biggest kind of manufacturer and the company that through the second half of the 20th century in the U.S. really kind of defined U.S. industry in general. They recognized that they had some problems and some just kind of corporate culture problems as well. Their attempts to build small cars in the late 70s and early 80s were
bad,
not great. Yeah, and And at some point they recognized this and said, you know what, we need to start with a clean sheet of paper. You know, we need to basically create a new division, a new corporate thing that will exist outside of the existing structure, organizational structure, and corporate hierarchies, and try to do something that kind of would emulate what was increasingly recognized as these just kind of these kind of corporate management styles that were being employed in Japan and elsewhere around the world, and but especially in Japan, were resulting in like way happier workforces, way more productive workers, and way higher quality cars, right? Not just engineering, but build wise as well.
Yeah, it was just really interesting. I think, like, you know, you went from this total hegemonic General Motors in the 60s to like, and I remember like reading about my parents talking about like the first Japanese cars, you know, there were Beetles in the United States in the 50s, and it was kind of a joke. It was like a cheap car, and then it was kind of like, it was like the lowest form of automobile. Like, you just had to get around. Then Japanese started coming in. It was like, why would you want one of those tiny pieces of shit? You know, they're so tinny, they're not comfortable, yada yada. And then like within a decade into the early 80s, General Motors was full on panicked.
Hey there, tired listeners. It's your producer pal Maddie here. Our conversation about Saturn continues in episode 6. That will be our Patreon subscriber-only episode for this week. To hear it, come on over to patreon.com/tiredpod, all one word, tiredpod. You'll be able to hear all of our premium episodes, past, present, and future. And you'll get fun extra little posts like Peter's photos and maybe some instrumental music in full that doesn't have us fading in and fading out. We hope that you will subscribe to the pod, and if you're already subscribed, thank you so much for your support. It means the world to us. And thanks again, and stay tired.